guys, it's Kelly here and I'm back with another video. Today's video is featuring some products from Pretty Pink Posh. This is from their new February release. I'm using the Easter word scenes, the eyelet diamonds, the daffodil shaker, and then I'm also going to use the Easter tags and an older set, the friend greetings stamps and dies. And so we're going to be talking about repeating patterns in both, whether you have dies or you have stamps. This will work for either which one you have. And so I'm going to cut out, I think I ended up cutting out 3 of the eyelet diamonds. I'm also going to cut out the pieces parts for the daffodil shaker. I'm not going to use it as a shaker. And this was my first time cutting it out. So that bottom piece that's kind of open, I actually don't need that. That's how you would make the inside, like the trumpet part of the daffodil a shaker. So I actually didn't need that, but I didn't know it at the time. And then I'm also going to cut my, this is the largest eyelet diamond. I'm going to cut that out of navy blue as well. I like getting more out of the supplies that I have. So I typically approach my card making trying to get the most out of what I have. Before I get too far into this, the Pretty Pink Posh, first of all, can we just congratulate Paulina on the birth of her daughter? She just had her baby, and it seems like everybody is happy and healthy, and so I want to wish them congratulations. Super excited for their family. But then also for this release, they're doing a bunch of giveaways on Instagram, and I think it's for like $30 gift cards. Anyway, it's open through February 16th. So you can check that out on the Pretty Pink Posh Instagram page if you are an Instagrammer. So now let's talk about the technique. I want to be able to get the most out of what I have. And I also want to be able to show you how you can get more out of what you have, right? So that we all shop our stash. So one of the ways here is I am going to use the inside of the diamond. It has this really pretty stitched detail, and so I'm just going to follow along that so that I can trim off the eyelet, and then that is going to give me a diamond that is the exact size that I need to change the inside color of my my die cut. So the eyelet portion on the outside will remain white, but then we'll have this blue diamond that goes inside, so that it looks like, you know, it mats it basically. For the repeat patterns on a stamp, this one is a little bit easier, and it's probably one you've seen me do before. So these are meant to be tags, Easter tags. They're adorable. They have dies to do like the hole to turn them into tags, but I'm actually going to use them as a background. So what you see me doing here is I'm just lining them all up so that they will fill the space. You'll notice that all the ones that are on the edge are hanging over. This is on purpose. It's so that your pattern looks like it repeats itself, like we just cut it from a larger piece of pattern paper. And what I'm doing right now is making myself a template. So I've just chose some brown ink. You can use whatever you have because we're actually going to see this portion of it. And I am just giving myself a template of where my actual die cut stamps are going to go. Now, I do want to say, you don't have to, if you don't have the die cuts, you can still do this. You would just do it like this, and then this would be your final version. I just picked out, you know, which ones would fill up the space best. Again, every part of that is hanging over. And then I'm just going to stamp it again. And then that way I can count up when I go to stamp them for real, to die cut them. I'll know, like, okay, well, I need 2 Easter baskets. I need 1 bunny. I need 2 spring flowers. I need 2 Easter eggs. So then I'm not doing more than more work than what I need, and I'm going to have enough for sure. So now I did clean off my stamps from that brown ink. I'm going to treat this piece of craft cardstock with my anti-static tool, and then I am going to stamp these with a pigment ink. I find that I get the best, brightest white if I do a combination of white pigment ink and white detail embossing powder. And so I'm inking these up, and then I do stamp them 2 times. Again, that's just how I feel like I get the best results. But you may have a different sort of recipe to follow to get the best embossed images. So I stamp them twice, and then I put on my embossing powder. A fine detail embossing powder is going to give you the most intricate type of embossing. And because I have little details like the decorations on the eggs and the sentiments that are on the tags, I want them to be legible. So then I heat set that so they're nice and smooth, and then I'm just going to stamp them again, whatever the next one is that I need. But I do recommend that you clean them off in between because that pigment ink does take a long time to dry. So if you just pick them up off your Misty Door or your acrylic block or whatever it is to readjust them and just lay them down, you will transfer ink. And then when you go to do your embossing, it will stick to that ink. So now I have all of these done. I'm lining up my coordinating die cuts, and I'm just going to cut all of these out. So that way I'll be able to line them up on my template, and I know that everything will be like I'll have a match for each for each stamp. So I'm going to die cut those out, and then just to give them a little added dimension and detail, I did go in with brushed corduroy and just go around the edges. This is going to help give them a little bit of lift from the background. If you are doing this type of background and you're not using the dies, you're just stamping it down directly, adding a line of dark, so like using a darker brown in this case, around your stamping, not over the heat embossing because you will cover them up. Oh, here I just lightly spritzed my paper towel with some water, and I'm just buffing off the ink that's sitting on top of the white. But back to the stamping. So if you want them to look more dimensional, you would just take a darker brown around the edge of your stamped image, and that will help lift it up because it has that little bit of darkness. Here, this is going to be the sentiment, and then the accents, I guess would be the best way to describe it, for our stamped card, and the sentiment for our die cut repeat pattern. I love these little scenes. Okay, she has a lot of them, these little word scenes. I think they're very, very adorable. So this one says Happy Easter, and I chose my color scheme based on my daffodil because which I can own. I am very weird. I like for my stuff to be matchy-matchy, especially in my pictures. So I was doing a yellow daffodil with a orange trumpet and then that blue background and the green leaves. So I just took all of those colors and transferred them right over here to this one. So I'm going to do a little bit of a gradient. Christina always tells me the difference between a gradient and an ombre, and I can't remember which one is which. I feel like a gradient is a bunch of different colors, and an ombre is the same colors, just in different like shades or tones. But regardless, I did it all in blue, from darkest at the bottom to lightest at the top. This is just going to help give them a little bit more character, rather than just being colored in a solid color. And then this has all these cute little decorations. It's got a little carrot, it's got an egg for the A, it has some little jelly beans, the little bunny tushy, a little bunny butt over there on top of the R, which is adorable. And so I'm going to color those all up with my alcohol markers. I'm using Copics today. And then the flowers and leaves I've stamped a bunch of times in the top right hand corner, and I will color those with the same colors, those oranges, yellows, and greens, so that everything works really well together. I feel like it's been a really long time since we've had any sort of story time. That may be because I've been doing videos for my classes, and like I don't have story time in my class videos because we're there to learn. Not that we're not here to learn as well, but we're also kind of here to hang out a little bit, right? I mean, that's not just me. So I did the egg white. I just added some shading with the cool grays, and the same thing with the bunny. He's a little bit, probably more gray than white. I didn't really leave any empty white space on him. So we survived all 365 days of January. Aren't we excited? I cannot believe how long that month was. It was so long. We got so much snow. The kids were off school so much. Just crazy. It's been like, my husband was like, I knew they said it was going to be a bad winter, but I didn't realize it would all be in 1 month. And I concur. I had no idea. Because like November and December were pretty okay. January just dumped snow, 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 snow. And currently my kids are outside playing in the snow, 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 snow. But in between all of that, my peanut butter had his 7th grade social, which is, I thought it was like a dance, and some of the girls like dress up like it's a dance, but then some of the girls wear sweatshirts and jeans. I'm not sure what the decor, like the dress idea is. They do have a DJ for dancing, but nobody was really dancing. My kid wore a hoodie. It was very humbling because, so you remember when you were young, like whatever it was you were wearing or the way you did your hair or whatever it was, your parents were like, come on now. I'm sure we all went through that, at least to some degree. My father had 3 daughters, so he was all like, you're not going out of the house wearing that type situation. But so my kid has always been into shoes and hair. That's just always been his thing. And that's totally fine. I was always happy to, take him to get his haircuts. I've always let him pick what kind of haircut he wanted to get. And in the last probably like 6 to 8 months, he hasn't really, it's been growing and he hasn't really wanted to go get it cut. And I was like, okay, here's the thing. He's like, well, I want it to be long. I want it to be long on top. I was like, I'm not opposed to you having long on top, even though that's not my preferred. It's not my hair. I was like, but there's a difference between having long on top and looking like unkept, like, and disheveled. So you can have it long on top and we can still trim up the sides so it doesn't look crazy while we're in the mid stages of, growing this out kind of thing. So that is what we did. We went and just got the sides trimmed up. And then when I volunteered at his social, you guys, I had to apologize to him. I was like, I'm sorry I gave you a hard time about your hair. I recognize that you are, in fact, the most well-kept looking one of them. Because his buddy looks like an English sheepdog. Like that, like that is the best way that I can describe it. He's got like this big flop of hair that's covering the whole front of his face. They all just look like, it's just wild. It's long and it's wild. And I'm like, I know the 90s were coming back, but at least in the 90s, like, we had the decency to put it into a ponytail. This is not like slicked back ponytail hair. This is like wild animal, like alpaca. That's what I want you to think. Like my hair when I go out in 80-degree humidity. Like, that is what these kids are walking around with, and they're happy with it. So I had to apologize to my kid. Because, his is not looking like most. Let's talk about this card now. Okay, so here we're going in and we're going to add the shading. I traced the trumpet section so I would know where to add the darkest part of my shading. And then I went in with my darkest color and I'm just going out, I'm working out to my lightest color. So darkest, dark midtone, light midtone, highlight. This right now, like, just bear with me. It looks like a soup sandwich. It's totally fine because we're working through what we are creating. So the key to this particular color combination is with the bright yellow, you have to go over those two kind of more brown colors in order for it all to look like a golden yellow. And then, doing the highlights just on the edges of those petals. I'm going to move on to coloring the trumpet. The trumpet, in order to give it a little bit of shape, I'm doing like these little triangles wherever the trumpet dips in, and that's going to help give it some more dimension. I went in with a lighter color first because I was a little bit unsure of my triangles. And you can always use that as a trick. If you are scared of a darker shadow color, go in with your lightest color first. And then you can build out from there, lightest to darkest, and it's not as scary. Plus, if you make a mistake, the lighter color is always easier to cover up than if you go straight in with a darker color. So then once I had my triangles down, I just moved out to my lightest color. That's going to give this a lot of dimension. And then I just laid it down so I could dry fit it. I am using those same brownish yellows for the stamen in the center of this daffodil, but I'm not going to use the lightest color. So I'm going to use the E99, the YR24, and the Y08, and that is going to be the stamen. So it is yellow, but it is maybe a little bit darker than our full-blown open flower. So that's what we're working with. I didn't love the dimension that I was getting. That's okay. We could go back in and rework it. So I'm going back in with that E99, and this time I'm doing the triangles out from the center, like into the middle of the petal. And then I'm going to check it again. I like that. That's giving us more dimension, but it needed to be blended out. So now I'm going to go back in with that YR24, and I'm going to go over what I've just put down, and I'm going to extend it out slightly. Having that darker color in the center helps the flower to look more concave and helps that trumpet part to look more lifted, which is obviously what we would want because that's how daffodils are in real life. So then here I'm using some yellow greens. I'm just adding some shadows to the outside of the leaves and then doing some darks at the bottom of the stem and at the top where it's going to come out from behind the flower. And then the lightest part kind of in the middle and along the tops of the leaves. So, yeah, so I mean, it was very eye-opening. Also, Jelly Bean's still doing dance, so we're still doing that. I did have to, can you guys even believe this? I did have to sign her up for preschool. I know, it's wild. By the end of this year, she'll be in school 3 days a week. It's crazy, crazy. I can't believe how much time has gone by that we're already there. I don't know. It just, my husband was like, I'm going to need a minute. I'm going to need a minute with this. And I was like, yeah, I bet you are. Cause like the littlest baby now is going to be school age. Crazy. All right. So now we've die cut everything out. Let's start building these backgrounds. So these are the ones that we heat embossed, inked, or die cut out and then inked. So now I've trimmed down my paper to what I want it to be, the final size I want it to be. Then I am going to glue down each of these. Because we stamped them off the page, there will be overhang on almost every single one of them. And that is no big deal. We knew that was going to happen because we stamped them off the page. I love a craft with a white heat embossing. That's honestly my favorite way to use it. I just think it looks so clean and like classy. But you could do this with any color, you know, whatever your design, whatever would work with your design, you can absolutely do that. And then once I get these all glued down, and you do want to make sure that you're putting a healthy amount of glue on the area that's actually going to make contact with the paper. Sometimes I find myself just like putting glue on the back, like I'm going to glue down the whole thing, and then that like corner is not well adhered. And then I'm going to flip this over. You want to have a good pair of sharp scissors. Shears are best because we're cutting so much. I'm using the Spellbinders ones, but I also have the scrapbook.com ones, and those are good as well. Just bigger scissors are going to work better for trimming this much off and keeping it nice and even, because we're not going to have to do a bunch of little tiny cuts like we would have to do with detail scissors, which detail scissors have their own pros and cons. So this is the last one. I'm going to trim that off, and then this is going to look just like it's going to look just like pattern paper. And then in order to tie everything together, I am going to adhere it to a piece of white that's just slightly larger, and then finally mat it on that navy. I think this is in the navy from Gina K. And so I'm using the mats. You guys know if you've been to my channel before, I'm early 2000 mats on mats on mats, and that's how I like my cards. But this is really tying in all of our colors together because we only have that navy on the sentiment. Everything else is going to be the orange, yellow, and green. So I needed another element to tie in that navy. And then I'm going to use my flowers kind of like I would use rhinestones. I'm going to use it to accent my sentiment. And I'm going to put like 3 up in the top right and then 2 down in the kind of like the bottom left. I found it was easiest to lay them out, and then I could tuck my leaves in place with the glue and then lift up the flower and glue that down. I found it that kind of approach to be the easiest to get them to be where I wanted them to be, without giving me too much of a hard time. But like here we have these repeating patterns, so you can use these stamps to make or the Easter tags. You can use them to make a card where they're the focal point. You can use them to make a card where they're the background, like you have here. You can use them to create tags. So here's already 3 different uses for those images where they will look completely different. So that you can get kind of more out of what you have. And if you like these tags, I think I did a Christmas one. She has Christmas tags as well, and I used those. So then once I have that done, I did pop that up just for a little bit of added interest. I'm going to add some clear shimmer onto the sentiment, and then of course onto the flowers. And then I'm going to also add in some white gel pen highlights. Doing the gel pen highlights on the actual letters give it a more dimensional look. That little white line almost helps to make them look more like bubbly, if that makes sense. So I highly recommend giving that a try if you've never tried it before. And then that is this card. That's the repeating stamp. So with the repeating die cut, I knew I had my focal point, right? I knew what I wanted to do. It was the repeating part that I was struggling with, because I didn't love all of that white on the craft. I didn't love all the white on white. I tried that too, or on navy. So what I came up with is a combination of the two. Do you remember that navy diamond that we trimmed to begin with? So rather than cutting a bunch, like die cutting a bunch of craft ones, I just traced that navy blue one onto some craft cardstock. And then I'll use my paper trimmer to trim them out. This is going to give me the 4 inserts for the diamond pieces, in order to fill up that background a little bit more and kind of frame in our focal point. You can use this for any, what do they call them? Like nesting shapes. You could use that for any of them. Here, once I tested it and I was like, okay, I'm good with it, I just went in with my eraser and got rid of any of my pencil marks. And then I'm going to start gluing all of my things together. So for the focal point, that's the one that has the navy blue cardstock in the center. And then we're going to put that daffodil right on top. And then for the other diamonds, we're going to use that craft cardstock. But you could, like I said, you can use this for any sort of nesting dies that you have. You could do rectangles or hearts or circles. Like you would just need to arrange them differently. What other hexagons? I think were wildly popular there for a while. I don't know if they still are or not. I always loved a good hexagon, so I guess I would still use it, wonder whether it was trendy or not, but that's just me. So here I've laid it in the center, and I'm going to adhere my flower. The reason that it's important for it to be on the card when I'm gluing everything together is because I need to make sure of how it's going to sit. I don't want my flower to be like super high up on the card or the stem to be down too low. And then from here, this is where I'm going to glue in those craft triangles. Now you'll notice this is the only full diamond that I have. The rest of them are like partials because I don't need full diamonds for every single corner. I do think if I had to do it all over again, I would have cut a third partial I did not when I was doing this, because I was like, oh, I'll just cut it off the one side and I'll be able to use the opposite on the other side. That did end up working out, but it was very, very close. It was a close corner, and I would not recommend that. But this center one is still not adhered. I just want to note that. It's just acting as a placeholder so that we can get the other diamonds into place. Same thing with the craft cardstock in the background. That is not adhered to the card base. That's all still loose because we still have to trim all of our extra off. So this is the one where I was like, I'll just, flip it, twist it, reverse it kind of situation, and I'll just use that corner for the bottom. It was a really close call though. So if I had to do it all over again, just to be sure I was sure, I would cut a third partial. And then I'm using those same shears to just trim those off. You could save them for another project, like if they were big enough to do so. None of mine were. So here, see how close that was? Look at that top right corner. Like it barely meets that corner. So do as I say, not do as I do. And then from there, it felt a little plain. You could do some stamping in white on craft, or you could do some tone on tone stamping, like with the brown. I chose to just kind of be really simple about it. I just used a ruler and my white gel pen to add like another little border or framing piece. Because I do love a frame. I cannot help it. It just appeals to me. It just appeals to me, guys. And so I went through and did all of those. Then I added some foam tape onto this center piece and popped that up so that it was nice and raised in the center. And now from here, I'm going to be able to then adhere it to each one of those, mats. The Hello Friend, I put kind of a little bit off center. I could have added some gemstones to this. I'm not really sure why I didn't. It's not too late. I might go back. And then I did have to tuck a little bit of foam underneath the section that overhangs, just so that everything would be flush and adhered really well. And so I just kind of tuck it in there, trimmed off any of the part that was hanging over, and pulled off the backer piece, and then just put that down. This one is going to get adhered to a piece of white. It's going to be the same thing. The craft will get adhered to a little bit of white, which will get adhered to the navy. This one does have a slightly larger navy border than the other one. It's just a different look, but also because we have that strong navy in the center, it gives it something to kind of balance it off of. And you could also do this. I chose the biggest eyelet diamond, but you could use a smaller one if you have a different sized focal point. So then this one will get the same treatment. We'll do the shimmers, and then we'll do the white highlight. I just did the center stamen, and then just kind of around the little trumpet area. And then that's it. That's both cards. So I hope that this inspires you to kind of use what different stamps or different dies differently to get more out of what you already have. Thank you guys so much for joining me. I always appreciate your time, and I'll catch you on the next video. Bye.